And while Bart is getting this set up, I do also want to stress that growth matters when it comes to how your students are doing academically when it comes to ELA and math. So growth is extremely important. I know there's a misconception about that out there, and I do want to reiterate what Mr. Hyatt said. This is state data that we have. And so I just want you to look at, up on the screen, if you look for the 5-year trend in math, so the blue line is the state, and the green line is our school district. This is where the state was 5 years ago, and this is where we were. It's a pretty good sized gap, right? Over 5 years, the state has grown less than 3%. We have grown, what is that, 7%, over 7%, 8%? It's almost 8%, right?
Yeah.
So look how we've closed the gap. And once again, it's just a tribute to what the board has allowed us to do and what the families in this community have allowed us to do and what Mr. Hyatt has allowed us to do. And then the next one is English language arts proficiency. 5 years ago, I just want you to look at where the state was, 26.4. We were at 14.6. The state's grown about 6%, a little more than 6%. We have more than doubled our proficiency rate and closed the gap. That is powerful. That matters. And the beauty of that is, just for the audience, there's a child tied to that data and to those statistics. Just really powerful information. So that's updated from what we had at the last board meeting that I presented. We didn't have the state data in yet.
Mr. Harasik, I have a quick question for you. What do you, looking at that data, the chart and the proficiency growth and everything like that, it's astounding to see the growth. What's the biggest stumbling block that we have from, being higher than that? Like what's holding us back from being higher than that?
I just think it's continually refining what we do, and then it's always we strive to make sure in the classroom that the correct standard is being taught and to the right rigor. And what I mean by rigor is, are the teachers teaching the right standard for 3rd grade or 5th grade or 7th grade? And then are they making it challenging enough to bring children up and not making it easy enough to where they don't really help improve a student? Because what all kids want, regardless of where they live, where they come from, they all want to be challenged. They want to be held to high expectations. And I'm not saying we don't do that. We do. It's just getting that alignment in the classroom to make sure a 10th grade English teacher is teaching that 10th grade standard to that level of the 10th grade and not teaching it at the 7th grade level. Because that just does a disservice to our kids. And what we need to do is just a better job of training in that area. And I think that's the biggest piece that probably holds us back. But I do want to be clear that we do a great job at what we do, but that's probably the biggest piece. Just making sure we're on grade level with the standards.
It's impressive. I just want to make sure that you and the staff have all the tools, all the tools that you need that we can provide.
And I do want to share, real important, we know this is really good. We're a really humble group, and we want to get better every day. We were never going to look at this and say, man, we've made it. Because a child is tied to that, and we need way more than 30%. However, for anyone to say that we're not doing really good things, you all know this, we are, because look how we've closed the gap with the state. The state has barely grown, and we've doubled our growth. Mm-hmm. And that just says something about you all and the parents in our community and the administrators and the teachers that we're doing some good things.
Why do you think we're still behind where the state is, even though we're improving at a greater rate than they are?
It's hard for me to answer because we've improved almost 15% in ELA. That's a lot in 5 years when really the average growth per year is about 2%. And we've almost got to 15, so I think we're going to catch them.
You think another 5 years we'll beat them?
No, I think sooner than that.
Really?
Don't you, Mr. Wright? I think in 1 or 2 years.
If you look at the graph and do the regression line,
sure.
it's not going to be that. So-
It's going to be pretty quickly.
Superintendent,
our same
Mr.
trend.
Mortensen, does, like, when we compare our Gallup McKinley County School District to the largest school districts,
It's coming up.
okay,
It's coming up.
okay, so so I just want to say, does that make a factor in this? Because this is compared to the whole state.
Yes.
Compared to the smaller schools.
Yep.
Where they have maybe 400 children, and we have 11,000.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
so there's.
And in a lot of cases, it's, Mr. Mitchell, it's easier to move smaller districts than larger districts.
I think that's a key point, Mr.
It is.
Mitchell, Mr. Mortensen, is when somebody comes along, like a charter school, and tries to compare 100 students to thousands of students and thinks that is statistically accurate,
Correct.
that's just asinine, in my opinion, about what they're saying. And statistically, anybody that has anything to do with math can tell you that that's just not a comparable population.
Well, that was going to be my question. This number that you're providing us and the green mark up there, that's all of our students. It's just not one grade.
Nope, it's all, everyone.
Because
right.
that's
Yep.
that's another thing that I heard about was they are using only one grade to see their growth
Correct.
or their proficiency, while this is our whole district, all of our students.
Correct, and I'll tell you what a lot of districts do, some of our neighboring districts, they cherry pick like third grade at certain elementary did really well, or seventh grade at a certain mid school did really well in other districts. That doesn't tell you anything. What tells you things are when you do district-wide data that you're really doing the right thing. And I do want to point out, just in math real quick, look what the state did in math. They went down.
Yeah.
They went down this year, and we did not. And so that's pretty significant.
I think one thing that I've seen since my tenure here on the Board of Education is when we didn't have a curriculum department, and now that we've implemented a curriculum department, we can say our kid from Theroux going to Navajo is at the same, they're all learning the same thing.
Yep.
It's not to where everybody's doing their own thing.
Correct.
We kind of have a guideline to where if a kid transfers, that kid will still be where he was in two different areas.
Correct.
And I think that is one thing that I've really seen. Even in my own family, I've had my kids go to a different school, but we could still rely on the same amount of education or teaching or curriculum that is being taught at that same school. So it kind of keeps them on the same flow.
And what you said is so important when it comes to people of poverty, because they move the most. And you level the playing field when you have that common curriculum, because they get access to the same standards in a sequence. That's right. So I'm going to move into, we did some data, just came in for the 10 largest districts, which is what Mr. Mitchell was talking about. So it's actually better than what we talked about earlier with you all. So if you look at this, so just in the last year, for English language arts, so you have Albuquerque Public Schools, Farmington, Gadsden, Gallup, Hobbs, Las Cruces, Los Lunas, Rio Rancho, Roswell, and Santa Fe. 10 largest districts. We are second in English language arts growth of the 10 largest districts. Only Hobbs beat us. However, if you go for the last 2 years, who do you think is number one in the growth? It's Gallup McKinley County Schools, yes. And this matters. Growth matters. Because once again, there's a child tied to that data. And it's from all over the district. So significant, isn't it, in math? And I think for us, when we were talking internally, we thought if we stayed in the top 3 in math, that'd be great. Well, we ended up 2 and then 1. It's pretty powerful. And it's part of our strategic plan to stay in the top 3. English. So this is English, sorry. In math is where we thought, oh, if we can stay in the top 3, be third, that'd be great. Well, in the last year, just want you to look at this graph. Same 10 school districts. You notice the blue going in the wrong direction? I'm sorry, the purple? It means they went negative. So I'm just going to, as an example, Farmington went down 3.1% in this last year in math. We are number 1 in math growth and only Hobbs is the only other of the 10 largest that actually grew just a little bit. And remember now, we're talking about Gallup McKinley County Schools, and let's just think about our history, right? It just adds more power to the slide. And then, so we're number one in 1 year growth, and then in 2-year growth, we are still number one of the 10 largest districts. And so that was speaking to what Mr. Mitchell talked about. And I just want to close with, for everyone in the audience and for people that we work with and the board, this is really like monumental, incredible stuff. And we always thank the administration and teachers, and we thank parents, and we appreciate that. But I can tell you now, if we didn't have the board's support and Mr. Hyatt's vision of putting the right people in the right places, and that involves all the assistant superintendents and everyone under them, if that didn't happen, you would never see this. So we really do appreciate it, because at the end of the day, when we have that cohesiveness, it's the children in your districts that benefit from that. So thank you very much.
Mr. Horacek, so we have math and English here. What other metrics are there?
From the state, there might be science, but I don't believe, not really. So it's really math and ELA.
It's really, those are the two big ones, huh?
It's the two. It's what the state assessment is on, is really, yeah, math and ELA, because science is only 3 grade levels. It's hard to do that. But ELA and math are 3 through 11.
So if we see this kind of growth happening in our math and our language, do you believe that there will also be some growth in our ACT and our SAT scores?
What do you think, Mr. Hyatt? I'm going to defer to you on that one.
Mr. Morrison, members of the board, Ms. Manuelito, that's a loaded question, because there are 2 different kinds of tests that we're looking at, and so you can't compare the 2. Some people in the state right now are trying to say that they're comparable. We've done the research to find out that it's a totally different type of assessment, and so one doesn't correlate to the other.
Is there still discussion of using the ACT as the next test assessment that New Mexico is going to be using?
Mr. Morrison, Ms. Manuelito, there is still some discussion. Obviously, we will have a new Secretary of Education in the near future, and so it's up in the air about what direction the state will eventually go.
So what are we doing? Are we still going with the same plan as before as the part to continue to, like, the direction for the test? I don't know what kind of assessment's going to come out, but what are we using as, I don't know, if I'm trying to spit it out right.
No, we know, we got it.
Mr. Morton, Ms. Manuelito, so if the state does choose to go to an ACT, SAT type of assessment, that will only be for the high school level. The database for questions and those types of things will still be similar to what we're using right now, 3 through 8. And so our alignment will still be in place for that. We don't want to jump the gun so that we're not spinning our wheels doing work that we really didn't need to until we get a little bit more direction from the state about where they're going with the assessment for high school. But we'll make those adjustments as soon as we feel confident that we're not taking any unnecessary risk.
And I just want to close with, for me, you see the beautiful graphs back there? They're all on the wall. And so we wanted to get them up today for the meeting. However, we know they were a little bit bigger last year, so we will redo them and we will make sure they're nice and big for the next board meeting. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horacek.
Mr. Mortensen
More
and
questions? Go ahead.
Mr. Hyatt. I don't have a question. I just would like to say that I am really impressed seeing the growth that Gallup McKinley County has come to within the past 2 years. It's very important for our kids. In order for them to succeed, we need to see growth. And therefore, I really feel that growth is important.
Mr. Mortensen, if I could say one last word on this.
Yes, sir.
I believe it's been difficult for a few in our community. Many recognize the growth and the importance of that. If you're not growing, you're not getting better, you're not catching up to the state or surpassing the state. But we were the lowest performing district in the state of New Mexico, and now we're in the middle, for example, for ELA, as far as proficiency rates. And while obviously we're not going to settle for that, I think it's valuable for our community to understand and recognize and continue to advocate for our students and celebrate their successes instead of a few trying to tear down their successes for their own gain. We've doubled the state growth at ELA. If somebody were to say that Gallup McKinley County Schools was going to double the growth of the state in ELA and reading 5 years ago, they'd think we were crazy. But we proved that that is not impossible, that we can do that. Our students are just as capable as any student in New Mexico or anywhere in the country, and they're continuing to grow. If you look at the trend of those graphs, there was no dip, there was no plateau. The data shows it's continually getting better. And so again, that doesn't mean that we couldn't have a year where we don't have that steep of increase, but the things that we're doing are showing that they work, and we want to continue to help students wherever we can with their academic needs. And so again, this is just proof that what we're doing is working, and we'll continually adjust because we're not perfect. There's lots of room for growth, and we'll continue to make those adjustments.
Mr. Mortensen, I would also like to echo what Mr. Mitchell stated. I think that, and also what Mr. Harasic said, I mean, this has been a team effort on everybody's part. And, you know, I think that I was very disappointed to hear, I was down in Phoenix with my dad, and, you know, just getting some comments about, you know, awful things that were being said about our district and our kids' progress. And I think that if individuals are here present or would have to be strong enough or brave enough to come to us and let us as a district explain what our growth looks like, would be better than, you know, publishing it. And I think that it's disappointing that we work day and day so hard, our staff, our students work so hard, but yet to not give them the credit that they deserve, or our faculty, our staff, the credit that they deserve of this proficiency growth that's happening, is injustice. And I'm very disappointed that somebody could be that cruel to demean our children's academic performances. And I'm just so thankful that I really would like to continue to push I've seen it on Facebook, I've seen it in, like now in the walls, and then up during the presentation for new teacher orientation a week ago or so. And I think we really need to advertise this and continue to have our children shine in anywhere else that will allow us, instead of the negativity that is continuing to bring the wonderful progress our children's making. So I would really like to encourage you, Superintendent Hyatt, and our staff to continue to post this wherever. I've asked our Terry Frazier and Vanessa for copies, because I'm going to hit my chapters and I want to show them these graphs, and I've asked them for 100 copies each of different things to give to our chapters. And I think that us spreading that positive word for our children is going to be more beneficial instead of the negative stuff that try to bring our district down. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelito. I guess our next presenter.
Yeah, you ready?